Hello everyone, Ladislas Maurice from the wanderinginvestor.com. So today we are two men that shall be discussing birth tourism in Brazil. Francisco, how are you?
The irony, you know? Good to be with you, Ladislas.
Cool, so I personally did some birth tourism in Mexico. I now have a Mexican child. I really like the program. I've made content on the Mexican option, but there's also the Brazilian option, whereby if you have a child in Brazil, the child gets immediate Brazilian citizenship. So Francisco,
Yes.
you help clients of yours go through the whole process from arriving, taking care of them, paperwork, choosing hospitals, doctors, et cetera, et cetera. So can you take us through the process? Let's say I call you with my partner and we tell you we want to make a Brazilian baby. How does this work and how can you help?
So in the case of Brazil, as mentioned, if the parents give birth to a child in Brazil, even if the parents are tourists, the child immediately gets the Brazilian citizenship. Then the parents, the grandparents, can apply for permanent residency immediately under family reunification.
Brothers and sisters of the baby.
Brothers and sisters of the baby under 18, or if they're students up to 24 years old, or if economically dependent, then whatever age. The birth process itself can be coordinated in top-tier private hospitals. You can expect to pay anywhere between 3, maximum like 5K, depending on where you do it. São Paulo, of course, is more expensive than, let's say, Florianopolis. But all of these are top-tier, high-quality hospitals. I myself am Brazilian, and when I want to do my healthcare, I usually go back to Brazil because I know it's a fair price.
So what about the different birth options? Some people want to have an at-home birth, natural birth, others want a C-section. Are there options for everyone?
Yes, so you can do a natural birth in the hospitals. You know, there's many doctors that will suggest a C-section, but you can do a natural birth. We also have contacts and connections with doulas. If you want to do a home birth, it's also a possibility. When the child is born, there is a child immunization schedule in Brazil, but you can simply tell your doctor that you'd like to have your child immunized in your home country, or that you already have a pediatrician abroad, and that you'll take care of that outside. So I've already had personal experiences where you just tell and you don't have to do it in the country at that moment. And then getting the child's paperwork takes a little bit of time, as everything in Brazil can take some months until you have all of the papers sorted out. But once you get into Brazil, you know, even as a tourist, if you have to extend that time, you can do an extension for once. And then when you apply for the permanent residency, doesn't matter how long that takes, you can still remain in the country legally while it's being processed. The processing time can go anywhere from, you know, several weeks up to a whole year. Really is
For the PR.
For the PR, precisely.
Do you need the kid's passport by then, or can you just have the birth certificate to use that as a basis?
Exactly, you use the birth certificate.
Okay, so essentially baby born, a week later you can be applying for PR.
When the baby's born, you get the child's documents, and then you can already apply for PR. And then if you want, you can also apply for the baby's passport, but that is not a requirement for the PR.
So, and I need to bring, I'm assuming, my apostille, birth certificates.
And criminal records.
Criminal background checks.
Exactly.
The parents don't need to be married.
The parents don't have to be married. If they're giving birth to a child, there's no need to have a marriage at all. What you have in Brazil also is what's called a stable union, so that also suffices for all intents and purposes.
So baby born, a week later I apply for PR. You say it takes a few months to get PR, depending
Yes.
on where we apply. A few months pass, I get PR. When can I apply for citizenship?
If you're the father of a Brazilian national or mother, then you can qualify for an accelerated citizenship. In just 1 year of permanent residency, you can go and apply for citizenship. Now, for this 1 year, you have to spend 9 months of that period in Brazil, meaning you can travel for 3 months, but you should stay 9 months out of that time in Brazil, so you can qualify for the citizenship application.
So a few months, 1 year, then I apply. How long until I actually get the citizenship? And do I need to stay in Brazil during that waiting period?
For the citizenship process, it's one of the fastest in South America. It can be as fast as 8 months, but can take up to 12 months, you know, a year in general. So we generally say, you know, although it's a 1 year qualification time, the actual duration is going to be about 2 years, and so until you have the Brazilian passport in your hands.
Do I need to be in Brazil during these 8 to 12 months?
You don't have to be in Brazil all the time, but they will call you for the interview and for the ceremony. So if you're not in Brazil the whole time, at least be close, because if they're calling you and you're not there, then that can delay the process for months. So we recommend stay on the ground, or at the very least be a direct flight away, so you can, make sure you attend all the ceremonies.
Okay. Are there any language requirements?
Yes, so even for parents of nationals, there is a B2 language requirement, just conversational Portuguese. There's a possibility of doing this oral test where you prove your language skills, but if you haven't come to that level yet, then there's some workarounds so you can qualify. So for example, if you enroll in a Brazilian Portuguese course and you finish that, then that can substitute the interview. So it's an option. In 1 year, you can learn sufficient Portuguese, especially doing a course, so that you can qualify for the citizenship.
I mean, and let's face it, it's Brazilians like to talk a lot, so it's pretty easy to find.
You'll be immersed with a lot of
yeah, it's pretty easy to find people to talk to in Brazil. That's it's not like moving to Switzerland and having to learn, Swiss German and just trying to even interact with people. Cool.
Exactly.
So what about little known benefits of the Brazilian passport? Because we all know it's a great travel document, EU access, blah, blah, neutral country, BRICS. It's for Westerners specifically, a Brazilian passport is a fantastic complement.
Yes.
Are there other little benefits that people don't necessarily know about?
The main benefit I would mention is that Brazil is a full MERCOSUR member. So MERCOSUR being the economic settlement bloc of South America. This means that I, as a Brazilian national, can request residency in Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina just by showing my birth or naturalization certificate in this case and proof of no criminal record. So there's no need for showing passive income, investment, opening a company, having a job, showing professional qualifications. Just don't be a criminal and be Brazilian is enough to apply for TR in all of these countries. And then after 2 years, the MERCOSUR residency upgrades to PR in all of these countries as well.
And what about the arrangement amongst Portuguese-speaking countries?
There is a similar advantage there. Since 2022, the CPLP signed an immigration treaty creating the CPLP visas and CPLP residencies. So again, there is this very simplified residency that by now is available in almost all of the Portuguese-speaking countries. Portugal, when they launched it, over 200,000 Brazilians applied on the first month. So that's been very popular. The EU is suing Portugal on it, so it's unclear where it's going to stand.
Did they get their residency?
Yes.
No wonder property prices are through the roof in Portugal. They're not building that much housing.
Yes, assuming that even if Portugal has to take that out because the EU is suing them, even the regular requirements for the other residencies have been lowered for CPLP citizens. So for example, as a CPLP citizen, you don't have to show that you have insurance, that you have return tickets when you're getting the residencies in Portugal. So overall, makes the process simpler. You don't have to do any translations also. If at a later point you want to naturalize in Portugal, you don't have to do the Portuguese exam because you're already from a Portuguese-speaking country. So it gives you a number of benefits in all the Portuguese-speaking countries, most notably Portugal and maybe Cape Verde, Angola, Mozambique, if that matters to you, if you're looking to Africa. And at the same time, all of South America except Venezuela and the Guianas.
Fascinating. Now let's go into the negative aspects of Brazil, namely taxation, because if you're going to be a permanent resident of Brazil, living there, working towards citizenship, you're going to be paying taxes.
Exactly. So when you become a permanent resident of Brazil, you immediately become a tax resident. However, there are some options to pay less tax in Brazil. Legally, there's no way to pay zero tax, but the tax burden is still going to be much lower than in most of the Western world. So first of all, there is the Simples Nacional companies. There is this simplified regime for small businesses that earn up to 4.8 million reais a year, so about 800,000 USD. In this regime, you pay tax on your turnover, not on the profit, so all that you earn, no deductions. And for most people that are earning between 100 to 300K USD a year, you're going to be between 3 to 15% tax. And then when you have this company, when you distribute the dividends, there is no additional taxation because Brazil has no taxation of Brazilian dividends. So that's already a pretty good taxation level. Most remote entrepreneurs, digital entrepreneurs, service providers use this company regime. And then additionally, since the beginning of 2024, there is the offshore law that went into effect that gives a 15% flat tax on offshore company profits that are attributable to you. So if you live in Brazil and you have a US LLC that is, a disregarded entity, not paying any tax in the US, then you pay 15% tax on the profits of that entity that belong to you on a personal level, distributed or not. So if the profits stay in the company, you pay the 15 anyway, and then when you distribute the profits, you don't have to pay it again. Or if you distribute it, you pay 15 right then.
Okay, so objectively, it's not that bad. Just paying a bit of taxes for essentially 2 years to get an amazing passport and getting to live in Brazil. I think there are worse decisions that one can make in life than that, for sure.
I like to joke that people pay a minimum of 15,000 euros per year to access this amazing 15% flat tax regime of Malta and call it a tax haven. But then when you have the same in Brazil and you have no minimum tax to pay, it's a tax hell. So it's a funny anecdote.
Yeah, and there's probably more to do in Brazil.
And way more to do in Brazil than in Malta. Yes, and an important thing is, so you have these 2 years, you become a Brazilian citizen, and then it's very easy to stop being a Brazilian tax resident because there is a simplified tax departure mechanism. You only file a partial year tax filing, there is no exit tax. And Brazil doesn't even require you to prove that you already have a new tax residence by the time you leave. You can just leave, like I'm going to this country or this country, but you don't have to show a tax certificate so they accept your departure. You depart, and then later on you can decide which country you want to become a tax resident of.
Interesting. Also, I think it's important to warn people that if you have permanent residency in Brazil, even if you do not live in Brazil, you are considered a tax resident, correct?
Exactly. So Brazil uses the 6-month rule, the 183-day rule for temporary residents. So under TR, if you spend over 6 months, you become a tax resident. But for PRs, the moment you step in Brazil with a permanent residency, you count as a tax resident and then have to declare all of your worldwide income and worldwide assets. But again, properly structured, you can expect a 15% tax during this 2-year period.
This is not tax advice, but generally speaking, if you live in a country that has an active double tax treaty agreement with Brazil, and you genuinely live in that other country and pay taxes in that other country, then that tax treaty would protect you and Brazil would not be able to make you pay taxes in spite of you having permanent residency.
And in any case, it's important to note that Brazil does recognize taxes paid abroad to credit Brazilian taxes, even for countries that don't have a tax treaty. So for example, in the case of the US, right, if you have taxes being paid in the US, you can credit it against your Brazilian income tax. So this is very common for Brazilians, let's say, who are investing in US stocks. When they receive the dividends and there's the 30% withholding, there's the withholding in the US and zero tax to be paid in Brazil because our top rate is 27.5. So they're crediting the 30 and they pay zero additional tax on that. So especially if you have rental income, if you have income that is already being taxed at the country of origin, you're not going to double pay that in Brazil, even if there's no tax treaty.
Great. So if you're interested in finding out more about birth tourism in Brazil, there's a link below with more information, and then you can get in touch with Francisco and his team for the whole process, choosing the hospitals, the doctors, all the paperwork, and the tax aspect as well. Francisco, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ladislas. It was a pleasure.
Make sure to download my free ebook, 12 Mistakes to Avoid When Investing in International Real Estate, which you can find on my website, link below, and feel free to follow me on Instagram @TheWandering Investor. I look forward to hearing from you.